Hi, my name is Randy, and this is my ethnographic review of the book called Inequality, Poverty, and Neoliberal Governance by Vincent Lyon Callow. It's an ethnography regarding homeless people in the United States. It was done at a homeless shelter in Northampton, Massachusetts called the Grove Street Inn in the late 1990s. He worked there for 6 years while he did the ethnography. He also worked, he says, at other homeless shelters, so he has a pretty good experience with homeless people in general. The book is not so much about homeless people's stories or what happens to people when they're homeless. The book focuses on what he calls the homeless industry. In other words, the business of housing and taking care of homeless people. What he talks about a lot is how the homeless industry or a homeless facility tries to find out what the problem is with the person that caused them to be homeless and then to fix that problem. The reason for that is because homeless facilities, whether they're public or private, need funds to operate, and to get funds requires a grant, and to write a grant you have to explain what you're going to do with the homeless person to fix them. The idea being that if they're homeless and they are going to be in a homeless facility, there's something specifically wrong with them that caused them to be homeless, and that problem can be fixed. He calls, or apparently the word that's used in the homeless industry is deviancy. Deviancy is not something that's like some crazy weird thing the person does. It's like anything that causes a person to have a problem that makes them a homeless person. This can be alcoholism, drug abuse, dependencies, family or spousal abuse, PTSD, incorrect mental ideas or thoughts that make them, not be able to employ, which could even include old age, race, and gender. Anything like that, that the person that can be targeted to be fixed, or the person's ideas surrounding that thing are what are called some form of problem that can be fixed. And those can be funded because professionals can be hired to address those problems, whether they're physical or emotional or mental. Somebody can be hired to fix that person, as opposed to looking at the outside system. And this is what the book really does in a great detail, is look at what causes homelessness to individuals in society. What societal changes have happened, such as businesses going away or business going out of business or factories moving to other countries, and the majority of jobs becoming low-wage jobs where people can just barely afford to get by or find a home, since a lot of those are very low paid, and they either require working a number of jobs or having a family situation where a number of people pitch together to help each other out. So anyway, that's really the prime focus of the book, is his viewpoints on that. So he calls his type of ethnography an activist ethnography, in that he wants to not just record what's happening to homeless people. He also wants to get them to be active to fix it. So what he'd like to do, and what he tries to do with those people he feels are able to do it, or the homeless people he feels are able to do it, is get out and perhaps protest or contact public officials or even employers, to sort of fix the system so that people don't become homeless. In other words, create scenarios where wages can be raised, or enough support systems can be had within a business that will make sure that people don't become homeless just because of low wages or something, or some kind of government policy. He'd also like to show through his ethnographies that anthropology has a practical purpose, which I thought was pretty interesting. It's not just anthropology as some sort of academic study, but that it has some practical purpose, that he can address a situation in society and help people fix it. So some of the ethical issues he talks about that he has are, he doesn't talk about people's specific names. He doesn't go into their case histories. He doesn't talk about the treatments they're getting. He goes around those generally. He does give some dialogue of some of the individuals um, when they're talking about the homeless system, not necessarily talking about themselves so much, but talking about how they themselves fit into the homeless system and what happens. He goes into a lot of dialogue with one woman in her 50s who moves in and out of shelters. And in fact, since she doesn't want to commit to saying that she has any kind of physical or mental problem, so they can't get funding for disability for her, that they actually have to kick her out of the homeless shelter because she won't conform to the model. She just wants to find a job, and she just wants them to help her find a job. And she does actually a lot of work trying to do that, but it just takes a while because she's older and not experienced in a lot of things, um, that would get her a job in that particular community. Some of the other things we've gone over that Professor Morris talked about is hegemony, and he brings up hegemony throughout his book. It's pretty interesting how he uses it. Some of the things he says about it, he says it's best understood not as a static domination, but rather as an ongoing process of establishing dominance. And he sees that as what happens with businesses and in politics, where a system is created where things can happen like homelessness, where the homeless people don't really have a way to get out of it, and they don't have a say in changing it. He gives a nice quote by Michael Foucault, which is the conceptual frameworks within which humans are made into subjects and how the processes of governmentality work together to produce hegemony, which I thought was pretty interesting. So all in all, it's a pretty easy read. It's very interesting. I like how he gives some connection to the homeless people without going into in depth about all the problems, but he shows how they can actually think about it. They're not just a bunch of crazed people. They actually are intelligent human beings that just have some kind of situation happen to them which made them homeless. Anyway, I like the book a lot. So anyway, thanks for listening.